My name is Renee Hobbs. I'm a professor of communication studies at the University of Rhode Island at the Harrington School of Communication and Media. And I'm here representing the Media Education Lab with my colleague, Catherine Morris, who's the Assistant Director of the Media Education Lab.
Yes. Hi, everyone. As Renee said, my name's Catherine. I work with her at the Media Education Lab. I also teach communications at the Community College of Rhode Island. But we're both here today in our capacity at the Media Education Lab. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about what our organization does, how we build community, and how that plays a role in civics and democracy, since we're here on Civics Day. So first, just to give you an idea, the Media Education Lab is an online community that focuses on connection, learning, and research. And at the heart of all that connection, learning, and research is media literacy. Have you heard of media literacy? Learned a little bit about it? Yeah, awesome. So you may have seen a definition like this one before. This is our favorite simple definition of media literacy. It's all about asking questions about the TV you watch, the movies you watch, the music and podcasts you listen to, the books you read, the video games you play, even the search engines you use. Being able to ask questions about all of the media you encounter on a day-to-day basis. And we think that this is important for many different reasons. First, for most of us, the media is pretty inescapable. Most of us have a smartphone either in our pocket, in our backpack, in our hand maybe, on the bedside table, 24/7. So maybe the TV is on in the background, maybe your friends are on social media or in the group chat, maybe you feel the need to keep up with the news as a way to be an informed citizen. So if we're so surrounded by the media all the time, we should be aware, at least, of what we're consuming and how it's influencing us. And so having background and skills in media literacy allows us to ask the right questions. Even if those questions are happening on a subconscious level in the background, it allows us to ask the right questions and be more informed. It's also important to realize that every message has an author, someone who created it, and every author has a point of view. They made choices as they made this media message. They chose what to include as well as what to leave out. And so this practice takes time. So being able to allow ourselves to slow down and be more aware of our media consumption, which also helps us be more curious, right? Maybe we look for more information before we take everything at face value. Oftentimes when we're going too quickly, we take everything at face value. Not only do we believe it, but maybe then we also share that same information with others, right? And so this is important in every facet of life, whether we're talking about research you're doing for your own personal health online, or as simple as watching a movie, or of course, since it's Civics Day, when we're interacting with democracy. So we want to talk a little bit more about how media literacy ties into democracy specifically. Most of you know that our politicians, as part of a democracy, don't speak to us directly. As close as we get most of the time is maybe they're on social media, but a lot of the times it's through other influencers or it's through the news. And so what that means is not only does that politician have a message, that message is passing through multiple other hands. And every person that message passes through also has their own point of view. And so politics is all about persuasion. Maybe they want us to believe what they're saying is true. They want us to agree with their opinion on something, or they want us to act or behave in a certain way. And the result is that we're surrounded by propaganda, some of it with good intentions, others intended to mislead or manipulate. And it's important to recognize both when and how we're being influenced. So you'll see in front of you, you have the media literacy smartphone cards.
Yeah, so this is like a metaphor for how to activate your critical thinking. And when we're engaging with the news media, we might use the reality check button. You see it there? When you press that button, you get to explore the question, is this media message accurate or inaccurate? And so being able to make judgments about message being accurate, truthful, reliable, credible, that's super important. As is the next one too. Look at that app. It's called Private Gain or Public Good. When you press that button, you're getting answers to the question, who's making money from this message? Because media messages circulate in an economic context and there is money to be made. So asking critical questions like what's accurate and inaccurate who's making money from this message. That's a really important skill of civics, of citizenship.
Mm-hmm. And asking those questions and being critical is important, but it's also not to say that you shouldn't be able to listen and learn new information and change your mind when it's relevant. That's a skill. That's a skill that has to be built. We call that critical thinking. But it's important that that changing of your mind happens in an informed way and consensually. And so we also know that sometimes that this influence comes from places that we don't always expect. So how many of you are on TikTok, for example? Okay, so you may have seen that a lot of viewers on TikTok are now asking their favorite content creators to comment on things that are happening in the world and share their point of view, even if that's not their specialty, if they have no real qualifications to talk about that topic. And so what we know is the result of that is that pretty much anyone can garner attention for their point of view if they just make a compelling enough post, right? It'll get attention. And so we want to talk to you about one major example we saw of this way that media can influence us. We like this example for a couple different reasons that we'll go into. Some of you may remember that in September, Charlie Kirk was killed in an act of political violence. And we're sharing this example because of the way media influence went into this event. We know that in this case, the shooter referenced a lot of different online subcultures by actually engraving references to them on the bullet casings. And so what we saw is that the shooter was much more tied to sort of a nihilistic, apocalyptic view of the world than any particular political point of view. And so the conversations that followed is the other reason why we like this example, is because you may have seen some of these videos, but they spent a lot of time just speculating. And this really showcases how quickly misinformation can spread. So some people speculated that maybe the shooter was part of the Groypers, which is a far-right extremist organization. Others thought maybe he's part of the MAGA movement. Others thought maybe this is the result of leftist ideology, and they used this as proof that the left is becoming militarized. And so the truth is, though, we still don't know where his political affiliation lands. What we do know is his affiliation with all of these online subcultures, and we know that this is how we know that these subcultures have a ton of influence on us. And so we just finished producing a series of videos on topics like this, where we feature young people from Rhode Island talking about these both hard and important topics. The video on this topic, you'll see, features 3 young men from Rhode Island. The reason we chose to do this is because while we're all susceptible to this influence, we know that young men are often the targets of this kind of propaganda. So we'll take a look at this video and then we'll discuss it afterwards.
Let's say an individual feels like very left out. They feel like, nobody listens to them, nobody likes them. And that's the kind of person that I imagine wanting to find some sort of, I guess, comfort or like some sort of, haven where they can kind of express that and find community with other people that feel the same way.
So they look into the internet or other forms of media in order to find something, and then they find themselves into a rabbit hole.
I know in these past few years, being a young guy, having some experiences where it feels like the algorithms or the social media, the things that I'm looking at, that I'll get targeted based on being a young guy. Yeah. So I'll play video games, and then I'll watch YouTubers or streamers that play video games, and then somehow videos that will come up that are targeted towards that kind of group, whether that's views on abortion or views on some sort of political social views. And I remember being a few years younger, just scrolling on YouTube, and then I was coming from videos like that, and all of a sudden I was seeing views that were talking about abortion, certain rights that women have, and stuff that was geared more towards misogynist, sort of anti-women's rights. Yes. And it's how did that happen?
Young boys, they can go on YouTube and they can scroll and whatnot, and then they can find things that are actually like really, really harmful, like just like two like random dudes with a podcast talking about something like extremely crazy, and they wouldn't even fully understand what they're talking about. They would just consume and then keep it as is because they can target their emotions because they don't truly know anything else, which is really harmful. And there's a whole nother rabbit hole.
And especially because we so often lead with our emotions rather than logic. I mean, that's my first instinct. As much as I try to get away from it, it's something that's really hard to resist. So when people try to appeal to that side, and the extremist media will appeal to emotions and like especially get people riled up about stuff, that's really where it can fall deep down the rabbit hole and kind of go to the point of no return.
Just how easy it is to even go down like a path like that, because one day you might be just like consuming or watching videos the same way that you do every day, and then for some reason your audience, like the target audience that you are a part of, starts to get some media that's a little bit pushing towards some of that like radical path, like violent path or hateful path.
And it comes from like nowhere too. It's very strange. You can like go from watching videos on like, oh, like why am I so lonely? How can I be cool? And all that. And then it'll like get you on this weird pipeline.
And even if you do know better, it's still really hard. I kind of first learned media literacy skills when I was in my 8th grade year, but still, in the next year, my freshman year, I was still having trouble, like, I wouldn't say falling down the rabbit hole completely, but kind of taking those first steps or the first signs and like seeing these big jumps in content from something that's like doesn't seem that bad to something that's completely extreme.
I think one of the things that I think about when it comes to this kind of thing is we can stop this kind of like radicalism, this rabbit hole, just by being kind to other people. Just being empathetic, listening to them, and just trying to like lead with love, lead with empathy. And I think that's something we can do every day that can just make the world better.
Yeah, definitely.
We gotta remember we are all human, and we will always be human, regardless of any differences that may be perceived.
And we're eager to hear from you. As you watch that video, what did you notice? What did you find yourself wondering about? What did you notice?
I would say like this is kind of like where like I agree with them about how like you can just honestly it's like kind of like escapable. Like if you're just like on a social media platform, you can click one button, you're like, what does this mean? And it can bring you down a rabbit hole and it's just like harmful things. And it's like very easy for that to happen. So I would say I agree with them about how like even if it's not your intention, it just kind of is like propaganda and it's everywhere and it like shows up very easily, which is like concerning.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I definitely agree with that, especially because like even if you don't end up finding a rabbit hole of like a specific political thing, I remember one time I saw I think like one single video that I thought was interesting and it was like debate related because I do debate, and then suddenly I was getting so many political debate videos. Just anytime I opened any app, it would be like political debates, and I was like, oh my god, like there was like so many, and I was like, this is crazy. I watched like I didn't even like it or anything. I just watched one video a little bit about something that wasn't even political, and then suddenly it was like everywhere.
Wow.
So it's definitely probably really easy to like.
Wow. So you guys could connect to some of the stories they were telling because you've experienced something like that yourself. As you watched them having that conversation, what did you notice? What did you wonder?
Well, I think that it's just amazing how easily like technology is able to manipulate us. Like we all
like by interacting with one thing, like we all are subject to like this manipulation. Like it takes the content that we like seek out and it like gives us content that it thinks that we're gonna like engage with and we're gonna like. And I feel like it's just amazing how like it does that for like literally everyone.
Mm. Thank you for sharing. What did you notice? What did you
I
wonder?
was also gonna say like the point they made about podcasts I think is really important because especially recently it's just been normalized for like anybody to like kind of like buy like podcast equipment and then start speaking on things that they aren't really qualified to speak on or like harmful things about people. And I think that's honestly also kind of like a really big issue because like they also mentioned like specifically towards like young like men, like it's definitely kind of targeted towards them and it's just a lot of like very harmful things that they're being told.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, like especially like alongside podcasts, they will spread like misinformation or like they aren't qualified. They don't know what they're talking about. Most, like a good portion of the time, or they do, or they know so little, and that can like reach other people's minds and like make them think otherwise and influence opinion or just like not say the right thing, which again is really really harmful. And people like I had a thought to this and I lost it, but like my sister, for example, she's 11 and she's like on YouTube and stuff, and whenever she like my mom was telling me like she's seeing things on her that she doesn't understand and she's like nervous and she's like scared, she doesn't know what she's watching and stuff, and like my mom was like, how do I like block it or like what do I tell her, because she's seeing things and she doesn't understand them or doesn't know them. And then it also is like people so young learning about things can be hearing them from the wrong people.
Right. Wow, thank you for sharing. And this kid, the one kid in the video said something like that he was maybe in the 7th or 8th grade and was experiencing some of this.
Yeah, I was gonna share something very similar. My little brother, who's also 11, was classmates with Paulina's little sister. Like he sometimes, obviously, like my parents try to like make sure he's not like too much on the internet, but it's difficult in this day and age, right? And a lot of people have like at least like a phone or an iPad or some way to like contact our parents. So it's like he sometimes will reference things that I'm like, how are you like referencing that? Like, where did you learn that from? And I have to be like, I notice it, and I have to be like, hey, like, where did you hear that from? And maybe think about where you heard that from, because like that's like why? How do you even know about that? And like, who did you hear it from?
What a great point, and boy, does that help us understand like what can we do to prevent people from going down the rabbit hole. So we did a lot of research on this, and we found 3 big themes in the literature coming from police departments, coming from Homeland Security, coming from the FBI. How do you disrupt pathways to radicalization? And over, the literature said the same 3 things. First is that when people have confidence in the future, they're less likely to go down the rabbit hole. When people have anxiety about the future, when they're scared about the future, when they don't feel confident, then they're more likely to be drawn to this stuff. We also learned that when people have social contact with people who are different from them, they're less likely to go down the rabbit hole, right? People who go down the rabbit hole are often in social contact only with other like-minded others. So we can disrupt pathways to radicalization simply by helping people have wider social networks where they're encountering and interacting with people who are really different than themselves. And then finally, surprisingly, people can be de-radicalized simply through small acts of unexpected kindness or support. One study we read was of Nazis, neo-Nazis, and they were people who were in the neo-Nazi movement and then decided it wasn't for them, stepped away from it. And over, those people kept saying the same thing, which is their thinking about racism or whatever was disrupted by kindness that was shown to them from members of the out-group. One guy told the story of how he was in line at the McDonald's and he was ordering his coffee, and the lady said, "Oh no, your coffee was paid for by the person in front of you." That's the pay it forward idea. Small act of kindness paid to a stranger. And when the guy saw the driver pull away, the guy who paid for his coffee. He was a black guy. And the Nazi was like, whoa, wow, this black guy showed me a small act of kindness. Like, so maybe I need to rethink some of my ideas. And small acts of kindness can have a big impact on moving people away from radicalization.
Absolutely. And we know that part of our role in building community, building a sense of belonging is hosting these online events that are open to the public, free to attend. And within these events, we model some aspects of community that we've recognized are really important. First is that we base it a lot on dialogue and discussion. And the reason we do that is because we really do believe that everyone in the room has something to offer and something to learn. And so we always bring in an expert so that they can introduce some new information, but we also know that there are going to be people in the room who has a point of view that's important to share with the rest of the group. And so we also partner with community organizations where we model that same sense of we have something to offer them and they also have something to offer us, so treating it as a two-way street as well. And then finally, included within all of this community outreach and partnership, we also follow that up with some research, which Renee can speak to.
Yeah, there you go. So we've been able to demonstrate with evidence that participating in the dialogue and discussion program about something like falling down the rabbit hole can have a measurable impact on people's listening skills, on their intellectual humility. It can reduce people's defensiveness, and it can increase their media literacy knowledge. So we're really confident that participating in dialogue and discussion programs can have a lot of value for people of all ages, because our work we've done our work with high school students and with adults in the community and with teachers in the community. So we're committed to the idea of building people's media literacy skills through dialogue and discussion about media, technology, and society.
All right, we just want to thank you for your attention, for your participation, your engagement, and of course for welcoming us to be here on Civics Day with you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.